for a very special program which we have created between FICCI Arise and FICCI on a very important topic, back to school. We have a very eminent group of panelists with us. So, they will be during the sessions sharing some of the best practices which they have undertaken while reopening of the schools. They would also be highlighting certain challenges which they had been facing rather. And to moderate the entire discussion, we have Mr. Manit Jain, who is the chair of FICCI Arise, with us. So I welcome you once again and thank you so much for joining for this session. With this, I invite our chair, Mr. Manit Jain, to do a formal welcome and context setting and also moderate the panel discussion. Over to you, Manit.
Thank you so much, Sumit. And on the outset, let me congratulate everybody who's viewing this webinar on the almost successful completion of an almost impossible year. This time around, last year, I remember most of us were scrambling to make our plans, knowing the inevitable was coming, yet hoping against hope that India would somehow remain insulated, which was never going to happen. And each one of you has worked hard in the service of these students against all odds. And we're all happy to be getting started once again. Yet, with social distancing, with all of the issues that we have right now, it's terribly confusing, confounding to get through the maze of how do you make this hybrid happen? What do you do for junior school? What do you do for middle school? What do you do for senior school? How do you keep kids safe? And there are just so many questions in our heads. And I want to remind you that this session is not so much about sanitization. It is not about safety protocols. This session is about teaching and learning, about how do we get through this maze, how do we take informed decisions, and we've got an incredible set of school leaders here. And, from Brian, who's the managing director of Nord Anglia Group of Schools, almost 70 institutions across the globe and in several countries across many continents. And I'll ask Brian to share that briefly when he introduces himself and the group of schools. Many of these schools have been open for several months now. So he's possibly the most experienced person in the room in terms of the different models that have been adopted. Then we have Ms. Shashi Banerjee from the head of Shiv Nadar School, Noida. And I remember that 3 months ago, Ashoka University was running something on reopening schools. And it was incredible to see how well Shiv Nadar had already thought about and thought through the whole process of reopening. So again, I'd say ahead of the curve. The school opened a while ago, and I'd say perhaps one of the best prepared schools on reopening in the country. Ela, who's the diploma program coordinator at Pathways, again, sharing the Pathways experience, a school that went into the physical mode almost 2 months ago, since the 15th of Jan, and is now running classes right from grade 1. So we'll have some very valuable insights there. And Surenderji, the head of DPS Bhopal. Bhopal is not the same as Bhopal. This is a place close to Pune, and I got an opportunity to spend some time with him in a retreat that we had. Sorry, Surenderji, did I get any of the details wrong? Ahmedabad. So sorry. And I had an opportunity to interact with him in a retreat that we had at Mayo. Actually, not so much a retreat, a coming together to discuss reforms in CBSE assessments almost 2 years ago, and it was an incredible interaction. It was very heartening to see how well he understood the subject of assessments and also technology. And we have a lot to learn from his experience again. And what is common amongst all these schools is that they're all back in business. And what is unique is each one of their approaches to hybrid learning. So, thank you so much, all of you, for joining. Really looking forward to this session to get some answers, or at least the right set of questions. So, let's begin with Brian. And I'll try to move to each one of the panelists with this first question, starting with Brian. Brian, tell us specifically and in the context closest to India. Yeah, I know that there are several countries, but you know which ones are similar to India, and you run schools in India as well. On how you have modeled the reopening, throwing light on what classes are coming in, roughly what percentage of students, do you call students on all days or some days, and how is this staggered roughly, if there is a commonality, or if you want to describe the range, that's good too.
Thank you very much, Manit, and welcome to everyone to this webinar. I hope you find it informative and interesting, and most importantly, helpful in a practical way, because that's the purpose of it. As far as our schools are concerned, we have, as you said, 70 schools in 29 countries. And our group of schools in India is the Oak Ridge group of schools, and we have 5 of them in 4 different states. The advantage for our schools reopening was that some of the schools in the group in other countries had already opened. And this meant that people were able to share their experiences of what worked and what didn't work. So what we've done in each state and in each school, well, first of all, we have to observe the rules as far as the state government's concerned and the government orders. We have to follow that, but we're also following the advice of our colleagues in terms of the hybrid learning method. We had piloted quite sophisticated cameras in some classrooms to see if we could stream the lessons. So to begin with, the question was going to be how many people we're going to have in the school. And it has varied. So for example, in some states, it was grade 9 to 12 only. And then gradually in other states added the rest of secondary and all of primary. And in one case, all the way through from early years right through to the end of school. So that's required different arrangements for different segments of the school. A popular pattern is to have 3 days a week face-to-face in school and 2 days online. So all of the students will be having the same learning experience. So they're either beaming into the class that's face-to-face, or they're at home, or they're in school face-to-face taking part in the lesson. But either way, they're getting a fair share. So if they have 3 days one week, they have 2 days the next face-to-face. And we're doing that in rotation. It's different for those segments and those year groups who are certificate classes and sitting exams, because they have been in almost all of the time to make sure they are prepared for their practicals, or completing their instruments of assessment for IB, for example, or any other work that needs to be done, or giving them a practice of a mock exam because they're going to have their proper written exam this month in some of the schools for Cambridge IGCSE, or later in the year for the IB exams themselves. So it depends very much on the school, on the state, on the situation. As a general rule, about 1/3 of the roll are generally turning up in most year groups. We expect that to increase as the new session starts. But of course, the determining factor for us are the government regulations. So if there's no movement on 6 feet apart, it's going to be very difficult for our schools to be fully open. We'd have to continue with some kind of rotation, and we'd have to continue by offering this choice that you can either be at home, online, joining a lesson, or face to face. So that's the reality of it. How we've done it is every classroom is equipped with a Logitech camera, which is hooked up to the teacher's laptop or the interactive whiteboard or smart TV, whatever the room has, so that the people who are online can take part in the lesson along with us, along with the ones who are in the classroom face to face. And we use various bits of software to make sure the lesson is interactive. All of our lessons are beamed through Teams, Microsoft Teams. We don't use Zoom, Google, or other forms or platforms.
So Brian, I'm sorry, I'm interrupting here. So we'll get to the technology piece. Before that, and I will get to the technology piece towards the end, because we also have some videos that will be able to demonstrate. I don't want people to lose this very valuable insight that you're providing into how you're running things. One very important question that I have, and I think everybody will be curious to know, given your international experience, so you're saying one third of the students are showing up right now in the Indian schools
As a general rule,
as
yes.
a general rule. And one of the biggest barriers for all of us right now is social distancing. And I don't want to comment on whether it is the right thing to do or not, but I want to learn from what your experience has been in some of the other countries where schools have been running. I understand that in a place like UK, even through the lockdown, the one thing that did not shut was schools. The second lockdown,
Well,
or was the last to shut?
during lockdown in the UK, they have closed, but schools have been open throughout for the children of essential workers. So healthcare workers, people who are providing the service throughout the lockdown, their children could still go to school, but that's a relatively small number.
Okay.
Schools in England have only opened last week for the first time for everyone. But around the world, in some of our schools, the early years and primary have never closed, because the medical research evidence is that younger children are less likely to contract the disease. And if they do, they don't pass it on. So, for example, our grandchildren live with our son and daughter-in-law in Stockholm. None of the schools have closed throughout this pandemic, except for those serving the oldest students, the 16 to 18-year-olds, because it was judged that 16 to 18-year-olds most likely to catch it and most likely to spread it, which is true. So it's interesting, in different countries, they've taken a different attitude. In other countries that we have schools in, every school has been shut. And then in some countries, it's only been our schools in the city that have opened because of the protocols we put in place. So, for example, using social bubbles and isolating groups of children. So if one child fell ill with COVID-19, it was only that bubble that had to isolate and not be in school. And the rest of the year group and the teachers who teach them could continue to work in school. So that's meant that education could continue face-to-face if parents wanted to continue with that. So we have different models happening in different places.
So, Brian, tell me something. When you say that these junior schools or primary schools have been open, have they been open without social distancing norms? Are there countries or schools where you don't have this barrier of social distancing norms that we've experienced that are posing a serious challenge here?
No, all of them have rules about wearing masks. So the
Okay.
staff and children have to wear masks to school. And the usual protocols about sanitizing, about taking temperatures, about health declarations, etc. All of those things are in place in all of our schools. The difference is social distancing, because in some countries, the distance is 3 feet. In others, it's 4.5, 5 feet, and some it's 6. For example, in Hong Kong, where I was in charge of the school there, we had to install plastic screens so that between each child, there was a set of plastic screens to ensure there would be at least 3 feet and separation between each child, particularly at lunchtime, because in many schools, children were only in school up until lunchtime because governments were worried that lunchtime is when they take the mask off to eat the food, and therefore more likely to spread the disease. So complete plastic screening. So for example, you had to sit in the lunch area, only face one direction, and sit behind each other, completely surrounded by plastic screens, so that when you took the mask off, none of anything that you breathed out wasn't being transported ahead of you. So that's the kind of thing that was introduced in different countries. And we
Right.
had to abide by that to make it work.
So Brian, you're saying it's the entire range from no social distancing measures to 3 foot to 4.5 to 6 foot to having plastic screens. And I'm pretty sure in another 3 months, you'd probably be able to write a paper on whether there was any correlation in terms of spread of the virus or not. And looking at how, we've probably not heard of it, but we don't know if there is actually a correlation or not, and whether social distancing measures will actually prevent schools from getting into the normal mode, which is what the developing countries are now trying to do to get back to full normalcy, recognizing that the learning losses may take a long time for us to recover from. So the things that you shared in general, what you're attempting in your schools is 3 days of face-to-face, 3 to 2 days of face-to-face, and you kind of stagger that. A third of the students showing up, 6 foot obviously over here, and we'll discuss the technology in a while. Shashi, over to you.
Thank you, Manit, and thank you, Brian, because a lot of the landscape that you've just shared with us is what we've all been through, because never before has the whole world and the educators opened up to sharing learning, best practices, structures, communication protocols, as has been in the past whole year. I think the kind of webinars, and it was a different kind of pandemic there also, where you had so much to sieve through in terms of information. As Manit was saying, the correlation of all of that is yet for us to figure out. So I'll just come to what kind of drove us and guided us was the core philosophy of continuing learning and keeping children, all age groups, interested in the world, in their own selves, in their families. So a lot of parent partnerships, and never before has any school been in public domain as much as it was in these past few months. And some were very good outcomes and some were very difficult also. And I'm sure all the educators here will agree it's not easy for a teacher to be sitting in her own living room or kitchen, or in some cases the terrace, to be able to take engaging session. So we've moved in the past, and yes, the youngest learners across the world were the ones where we had to think most, because they were not the ones who could easily take to screen. And it also depended on the readiness of the school. For us in the middle and senior school, with an ongoing one-on-one technology program, the personalized learning, we were kind of tracked into after the air impurity scenario in the last 2-3 years in Delhi, as you all know, and the NCR. So a lot of the Google Classroom, but the video conferencing tools were not really exploited to the extent that we realize they can be now. So one thing that went boom, I think, right from March, and there were all kinds of advisories on Zoom, and I don't know whether that was a trade war or what, and there were all kinds of stipulations on what to use, what not to use. So we did, of course, as the Shiv Nadar Foundation, which is so parallelly connected with the HCL technologies, we did have, I would say, a huge support system to kind of prepare ourselves. And Manit, when you were sharing that we were prepared, I think I owe it all to the partnerships and to the kind of already available knowledge pool that we had around us. And thanks for that. But as educators, who again go to the core philosophy of our constructivist pedagogy of how children learn their construct their own learning. And heutagogy, the approach to self-directed learning, we did take some time to see how we could build on the already available digital learning system. We also had to see where is the learner coming from. We have a complete a mix. It's a very, very diverse group of learners. We have diverse group of teachers. Some are sitting in Hong Kong, in Sweden, in Uganda, in Australia right now. In fact, our back to school Spock, Matthew, is kind of looking at the world through the lens of Perth, Australia right now, and looking at what best practices can be put together. So while we are a school in NCR in Noida, we have our people spread across all over. So a lot of pooling of those information and knowledge resources is happening. What we are doing on campus. So never before, again, I would say, there are decades when almost nothing happened, and there are weeks when decades happen. So that's what happened for schools. With the government advisory, so I look at it as a quadrant. There is the government stipulation advisory order for everyone, education being a concurrent kind of menu. You have the board regulations and you have the state regulations. So we've started reopening the physical campus since January, but there have been learners who have been coming in either for sports because they are into some kind of a sporting activity where they can't stay back home, and do things there, or for some other kind of research work that they are doing because they're already onto their college admission. But that we have been very careful about how the teacher and the student is meeting. So the one-on-one personalized learning thread has been on. The pedagogical interventions that we did was we took the curriculum to see how home can be transformed into labs, because there is the kitchen, there is the garden, there is the homework. And so there were regular kind of conversations and communication on how to help the mother in the kitchen, how to help the father. As I said, we have neighborhood children, economically weaker section children. We had to immediately get into bridging the divide there, and we'll talk more about it when we do. Right now, for grade 9 to 12, as you know, we have multiple boards. So the IB, the International Baccalaureate, which has a system where they have been regularly in conversation on what kind of examinations, how the predicted grades would score, etc., etc. So there is a lot of clarity over there. Even the CBSE, I would say, has been very proactive in terms of getting people together to take decisions. So the 10th and 12th are kind of geared towards preparing for their practicals. And we are doing hybrid in a manner where Brian shared. We first looked at how to equip those classrooms, which were the first phase to be equipped with. So we have swivel cameras because mobility is an important factor in this kind of teaching and learning. It's a very expensive proposition. So we also have the other kind of cameras. And of course, not all teachers can come on campus due to the vulnerabilities that we share across, whether it's a child or a teacher. So we have had a lot of human resource, material resource, and the bandwidth resource management. There have been teachers sitting in Gwalior, sitting in villages, also beaming lessons. So how to reach them, how to give them. I heard of one of our parents who said we also reached some good furniture for our staff because, the organo chairs, etc., because they were sitting from morning till evening. I thought that was fascinating as a company to do because they won't have it. So there have now coming to the middle school.
Shashi, so I'm just going to get back to what classes are coming in right now specifically. What percentage of students, and do you call students on all days? Is attendance staggered? If so, how? Just if you could throw some light on that.
Yeah. Again, it's been phase-wise. 15th of January onwards, you had the grade 9 to 12. It was about 20% till February. It increased almost to a 40% by now when I'm talking to you these past 2 weeks.
Right.
And we've started with the middle school coming in.
When did you begin that? middle school?
Grade 6, 7, and 8 for us.
Grade 6, 7, and 8, and it's been a couple of weeks.
A couple of weeks, and
Uh-huh.
because of this, we would really not have started off with the grade 1 onwards, but there was a regulation and order compliance to be met with by the UP state, and of course, we opened it as an option. We were quite surprised. The first few days, it was barely 10-15%, but it has picked up to 30% already by now. And we kept auditing our own system. So while you said it is not about safety protocols, etc., but the only confidence building measure for a parent is to see that my child is safe. And then is the key activity happening, which is learning. So we've had our parent representative group members who were very supportive coming in with every group also to experience what is happening. And that's how the whole thing is evolving.
So Shashi, when you're talking 6 to 8, say you're getting about 30%, and you're gearing up now for the junior school
They've
also.
already come.
They've already come.
We now have grades 1 to grade 12 on campus.
Everybody.
I'll come to the design.
So how are you staggering this? Are these people coming every day? Are they coming alternate days? Or how is this structured?
So till the 26th of March, there are some 2 days in a week that the early years will do. There are some 3 days in a week that the primary sections will do. And there are 4 days in a week that the senior school is doing. Out of these, there are some areas which are completely only sports oriented, music oriented, dance, or all of that. But also to share with you that from April 18th, when we are actually opening with a 100% occupancy plan, that is April 18th, 19th onwards, we do have a plan of the bubbles to trace, but making it available even if 100% people come in. And so planning a double shift is what we are doing there, because we would like to have the entire 7.5 acres open to the whole lot, because we would like them to be out and do the things we've been discussing. The younger children have been quite glued to their own devices, and the laptop is their school.
So the manner in which you're planning to deal with this is a double shift going forward. So I'm going to come to plans for April in a little while. Let me just get this basic information from Ela and Surinder also. So Ela, why don't you share specifically what classes are coming in, what percentage of students, and how are you staggering attendance?
Hi, good evening to all of you. So in January, after the government mandate, school decided to start classes in physical space, at least for those who were willing to come to school. So since the school has been maintaining and adhering to all safety protocols, so we were kind of well prepared for the students' arrival. Of course, in the beginning, we started only for grade 10 and 12 being board classes. The numbers were not very great, but then after a week, when we started for grade 9 and 11, we saw the numbers going up. So if I tell you for today's date, we have got almost 40% students of DP1 coming to physically to school, and around 80% of DP2, which is grade 12, coming physically. In fact, they had their TOK presentation last week in physical space. And also we are starting our mock examinations from Monday, which is 15th March onwards, again in physical mode. So we have 4 days out of 5 face-to-face. Only Thursday is online. And regarding staggering, so students were again called in staggered manner, after which grade bubbles were created in the academic block. For example, DP year 1 is on the ground floor, DP year 2 is on the first floors. And so the purpose was that students' movements can be minimized. And so basically the teachers are expected to move from one class to another. Also, we are trying to maintain this, like in a standard size classroom, the occupancy is like maximum 14 students. Now, when it comes to the entire school, so like slowly we opened for middle year and then for primary also. We have separate buildings for each program. So primary school building is separate. So this week onwards, like they have also started coming. But again, we have our cafeteria timing separate. In cafeteria also, the floor wise distribution is done for, like say, the day boarders go on the top floor, the boarders go on the ground floor. So we are trying to maintain the social distancing as much as possible. So now since some students came into physical space whereas others continue to be online, and of course as per government mandate we cannot force, so the school has adopted hybrid learning mode, which is the implementation of synchronous lessons which are taught in person as well as
Right.
online.
And Ila, we'll get to that. I think my next question is going to be around how the hybrid, and I think that's the one thing that people are really curious to understand. How does this thing work? Does it work? The question again. So you've shared 10th and 12th is coming in already. What about the other classes?
So
What are you
10th and
seeing?
yeah, so 10th and 12th were the starting point.
Right.
Within a week, like next week, 9th and 10th also started. After 15 days, grade once the government allowed to for grade 6 and above. So right, I would say in the first week of February we started with that, and now we have in fact primary coming in physical space.
Right. And what is the attendance that you're seeing across?
So I would say, especially with junior classes like 6, 7, and 8, we see the more numbers coming out. Maybe because the parents are also wanting them to go to school and engage. And of course, board classes. So grade 12, we are having majority of students coming in, and after this holy break, we are expecting the numbers to even increase because we have a lot of borders. So the border parents are also waiting for. In the first week of April, we are expecting majority of students would be joining us.
So you're expecting your attendance to possibly go as high as 70-80%
Yeah.
in April. You're at about what, 30 to 40% right now in the non-examination classes?
Yes.
Right, great. And you've not had to stagger attendance. So everybody, whoever is willing to come to class is free to come to class on every single day. Is that the model right now, or do you call
Yeah.
them on some days?
No, no, no. So what we have done, the students have to come up with an undertaking which is signed by the parents, like a consent form, which talks about like they don't have any history at family, and the risk factors have been kind of taken care. So they come, and of course we are not stopping them right now. So a child is like, if a child has come once, so if they see value in physical, because that's what I would come up. So what happened is once it came up as a challenge because the parents started saying that online students are not getting the same attention as the physical ones are getting. But then we also noticed that right after that the numbers started going up, the physical ones. So I see the students and parents seeing value in physical lessons, so the number that way also is going up.
So that's a very interesting point. You're saying that parents who are sending their kids are finding a greater value, and the others who are not being able to, for whatever reasons or the choice that they're making, are feeling encouraged. And that is something that I'm noticing across schools, that as students start coming in, the attendance starts picking up.
Yeah.
Right. Great. Surendarji, let's hear what classes are coming in, what percentage, and how many days, and how you're staggering it.
So we were mandated by the state government to start the schools from grade 9 to 12. So first it was 10 and 12 as the same case with ILA. So 10th and 12th started coming from mid of January, and attendance was almost 25%. But there was one more mandate given by the state government that every child who is coming to school have to submit a consent form by the parents. Now, once consent form was there, many parents, they refused to give the consent form. This was very, awkward situation for the school, because if parents are not giving the consent form, in that case, we cannot force the child to come to the school. So whosoever had come to the school, we started teaching 10th and 12th, and within 1 week, we started grade 9 and 11. Surprisingly, though 9 and 11 has promotion exams in the school, and 10th and 12th, they have already finished the syllabus and only practice exam was required. So I could see many students from 10th and 12th coming to school, and now they are coming for the practice examination. Almost 80% is the attendance. And grade 9 and 11, whose exams are only promotional exams, which are very, very important for them, they are coming only in 15%. So I have also staggered the timing. Like grade 10 is coming at 7:30, grade 9 is coming at 9:30. So next day, grade 12 is coming at 7:30, and grade 11 is coming at 9:30. So this is the way I have scattered, so that whosoever coming to the school by school buses, so they are not gathered together in one bus. Hardly 10 students are available. If I club them, there might be 40 students. So keeping social distancing in my mind. So this is the way we have staggered. So far, only 9 to 12 are coming to the school, and 6 and 7, because syllabus were already completed, and we prefer to give online examination. So all these kids from 6 to 8, they are ready for the examination, and exams have started online.
So you're saying that currently it's 9 to 12, 6 to 8, because they're in examination mode. There's no point running it physically. Given your experience with a grade 11, you recognize that the attendance is going to be very thin in the exam, in the real exam. In the mock exams, you've had very high attendance because kids want to get used to it. So not surprising, we're seeing similar patterns everywhere. So now my question is on what the different modes are for junior, middle, and senior. And I know that some of you have not started all parts of the school. I'm actually more curious to understand what is being planned for April. Say, I know most of our schools now are sitting at the cusp of the session, and we're now planning for April, and most of our listeners right now would want to know what you're planning. How in where is it hybrid? Where is it pure online, pure virtual, pure offline, separated? What are the models? And please share as per the age group, and feel free to divide them in whatever age groups you have. Yeah. So Brian, you want to take a step? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Well, what we are offering is determined by the age group and, of course, the situation in each school. So we have one school that's open from early years all the way through. So the balance is determined by the age of the child. So in every case, we're delivering our lessons either face-to-face in the classroom, and in no case is that happening entirely. So we don't have a situation where every member of the class is already there. So we are planning on the basis that some classes you could have 100%. We've had 100% of our students turning up for mock exams when they are physically in the school, or for some of the preparations for practicals, etc. That's been made available to them. But as a general rule, we've not seen 100% turn up for any year group or consent be given for that. So we're planning on the basis that most lessons are going to be hybrid. And that means we've got to get the balance right and plan for it changing in terms of how many are going to physically be in front of you and how many will be connecting. Because we still have a situation where we've got some of our families who are not in the country. So they've always been accessing from another country. They've not been able to get back for some reason or another. And we're predicting that that's going to go on for some time with different groups, either because parents want that to happen or because circumstances force it. So assuming that we're working on a hybrid model, for the early years, less screen time than there would be for the oldest students. So if you can imagine it on a spectrum of the least to the most, then it runs right across the age group. So a bit more screen time for primary, even more for early secondary, and most for senior secondary in terms of synchronous and asynchronous learning. So you would arrange different activities, but we've got different things that we do. So for example, we'll do more activities that the children, younger children, can do at home as a project. So we have competitions where we involve the whole family. It might be in artwork or baking. You know, we had the family making the best castle they could out of any materials you had at home. So some did it out of Lego. Some people used cardboard boxes to build one in their garden. Depends what they want to do. But I think what was really striking is how that helped families who were locked down or were all working from home to actually do something together that was meaningful. So that's something you might do with younger children, but you're not going to do that with secondary children.
So, but Brian, if I can ask you, when you're talking about younger children, screen time is one thing, of course, that we're all trying to minimize for them. But how do they come in? Say in a particular school, if you were going to call grade one or say kindergarten students, if you do you call all of them on one day? Or particularly as we're evaluating these multiple options, hybrid seems very, very difficult for the younger kids, because when you're running online and a teacher has every kid's attention, it's a very different situation. But if a teacher is going to lecture on something or do activities within a say kindergarten classroom, the 4-year-old on the other side is likely not going to learn much. So how are you managing that problem?
Well, first of all, we have to run it by consent at the moment. So it's up to the parents if they're consenting for the child to physically come.
Right.
So we make that opportunity available for them to come. And as I say, on average, we're talking about a third. Some classes more, some classes maybe slightly less, turning up. When it comes to the full school being available, reopening, then we are anticipating that either we'll still have parents saying, I don't think I'm ready yet, send my child in, or we'll have to ration it ourselves if the social distancing rules apply still the way they are. So we have to be ready for that. Now, if the child is new to the school and has never been there before, we've been running a school readiness program for an hour and a half, 3 times a week for children who haven't attended school. And we're showing parents, this is what's expected of them, this is what we do. If they have been in our school, then we have routines we've established with them. And whether they're in the class or not, for the youngest children, the bulk of the learning is through play, because we are teaching either the early years program through the IB or through Cambridge, which is very much based on learning through play. So it's not about teachers lecturing. Similarly, a lot of that is also happening at grade 1 in the same way. So as they move through primary, there's more time spent in direct lessons. But again, the balance is still a limited amount of screen time and a certain amount of activities. And we're not running it for them for a full school day. If they're physically coming into the building, they have been there till lunchtime only. And we will gradually increase that time and include lunchtime as and when it's appropriate, depending on the situation the government allows and whether or not we can maintain social distancing for the lunchtime operations in particular. Because that's the biggest challenge, is staggering lunch, supervising lunch, delivering lunch to those numbers.
So let's, Brian, for the moment, let's stay with the early years, and I'll move around all panelists to understand what's happening in the early years. So, Shashi, imagine a situation. Now, I know Shiv Nadar has about 30 students to a class, right? Now, imagine that you're opening this session for nursery students, nursery and kindergarten.
Nursery and kindergarten have 25.
Have 25, or let's say nursery, kindergarten, grade 1, we're opening the session, and let's say about 80% of the parents consent to send their wards.
Yes.
Now we're in a situation where you will not be able to accommodate 20 or 25 students in a class. So would you divide the class? Would you call them on alternate days? Would you have 20 kids in the class and relay the lesson to the other children who are sitting online? How are you proposing to manage this?
So I'll start with the early years, the earliest learners. Manu.
Yes.
We have created a plan where we tried it also and we see it's working well. We break the group. We have individual, which we call the personalized learning plans and the group learning plans. So there are pretty much those groups that are already available, and we put them into 2 bubbles. Every homeroom, we call them, is put into 2 bubbles. And we are looking at a bit of a permanency there, so that a parent who gains confidence and wants to send very next day, also the bubble is available. Because, there's a big problem in running it as per occupancy. You have to run it as per available occupancy at any time. So we put them into two bubbles. One bubble for that particular grade comes in, and the teachers are looking after. So let's say we're doing an 8:30 to 11:30 on campus, and then the children go back home, and then there is a circle time and other activities which is towards the evening before the teachers leave campus, which is after 2:30, between 2:30 and 3:30. Now there is another bubble which will come another day. So we are keeping a minimum of thrice a week on campus engagement, which is working out fine according to the bubbles. We have 5 habitats each band. And what is also happening is that the kind of skill time, theme time that we are dividing it into is also allowing for the child to be doing those kind of things which they don't really get to do at home. So it's a very different experience. For those who are not coming in at all, we have another specialized program, because while you divide the two bubbles, not everyone, as you say, is coming in. Those who are not coming in are doing certain things apart from the physical campus time. We don't look at a hybrid mode of technologically enabled hybrid mode there. But again, asynchronous offline time where there are certain activities, and we have a whole lot of parent partnerships there. Now, coming to our economically weaker section, we call them the neighborhood children. So there is a program also for their the devices and all of that have been given, and training has been done. So they are also part of the same bubbles. The only thing is that every bubble gets 3 days of experience. I think Brian was sharing the same thing. And as we move further ahead to grades 2, 3, 4, and 5, it shifts a little, the design. Again, we're dividing them into 2 groups. We are not looking at the camera-led hybrid mode where everyone sits with a system. No, it's purely a physical campus interaction, but everyone gets an experience at least thrice a week on campus and thrice a week off campus. And those who are not coming on campus at all, they are the ones who are being compensated with one-on-one personalized. Everyone is doing a personalized learning project, but they get a little extra time with the teacher, which they are not getting face-to-face. So idea here is not to disrupt the online. We call it the connected learning program, Manit. And, we're not using the word hybrid, because what is more important is the learner remains connected to the learning and the teacher enables learning. So as we move further ahead from grade 4, 5, 5 does more project work, 4 and 5. So their kind of cohorts are slightly different in their kind of engagement. We've also distributed our whole cohort of sports and music and arts facilitators accordingly, because if you're doing a double shift, which will start from April 19th, we'll see how it works. It looks very promising. Not merely because we need more, we have enough space, all of that is there. But you need the availability of the teachers also. If you're doing smaller groups, it can become very tedious, and the social and emotional, physical well-being of the teachers is something which we all have a lot to talk about in this whole year. We've been looking at
Shashi, I think that's a very important question. Now, when you're talking a double shift, getting kids in, getting one bubble in maybe 8:30 to 11:30, another in maybe 12:30.
a little early. No, we'll overlap. We have space, so we'll overlap. So one comes in by 11. Yeah.
So you have the luxury of that space, given you have a 7.5-acre campus, and you probably have more rooms than classrooms. You can split the classes. You probably have enough teachers also to be able to do that and create a timetable where a lot of these kids get occupied, while most schools may not be able to have that luxury. But what I'm taking away from what you're telling us, which is important, is that in the youngest of classes, you're looking at 3 contact sessions for every child. in a week, and then some online work with some asynchronous tasks.
So Wednesdays across, what we've learned from this whole year is that the school need not run for all 5 days the way it used to, because we're doing a little bit of a resume pause time once a week according to the need of every cohort.
Right. And we're also taking that time for students to adapt now to the physical environment, just like adults are finding it hard to get back to their workplaces. Children are going to need that time to adapt as well. And in the higher grades, 2, 3, 4, 5, still primary, again, you're staggering attendance, but you're not using hybrid groups. So you're not relaying the physical class, or are you doing that?
We decided not to do that till June, because they've already been on that mode right up till now. Now is their time to get a bit of a release from there. Right. We will assess how it is going in terms of the learning, outcomes that are to be achieved. I think we've mapped it out fairly well, right. And no plan contacts actual when you hit the road, as right. They say.
Right, we'll have to continuously
assess. Yeah, so we keep assessing. It's a shifting goalpost, Manit. Every time you're looking at something, but we are more settled in terms of a hybrid mode completely from our middle school, which is age 11, 12 onwards. Also, as Brian was sharing, we've made those funny looking contraptions for the older children where there is these walls, nice little glass walls they have. But it's helping because they are larger built. They need more space. There can be body movements which need to be restricted a little. So I think it's being adapted according to the age group, and that's what is leading us on to do.
So for the older groups, you're continuing with the hybrid transaction. For the primary school, you're completely avoiding that. You're trying to maximize the physical time and making the project and asynchronous work more meaningful, so as to also promote independent learning and protect them from screen fatigue. So great. Ila, how about Pathways? So what is happening at Pathways right now?
Yeah. So
in the primary years.
Yeah. So our primary school initially started with using a Microsoft application Sway, and now they are also using Zoom with a lot of asynchronous method, because again the purpose is that don't want to put a lot of stress on the little ones, so to avoid a lot of screen time. So they have a combination of fewer hours of screen time. So let's say 3 classes they have online with 40 minutes each, and which is followed by one-on-one method, like a little bit of hybrid model too, coupled with the little bit of asynchronous tasks. So which is like post lunch they have enrichment classes and all. Whereas for middle and senior, we are purely going for hybrid.
Right. So similar to, in terms of schedule, similar to what Shiv Nader is looking at. Surenderji, what's happening at DPS?
So I have a statement to make that once I read somewhere that Shakespeare wrote, a rose by any other name would smell as sweet, whether you call it champa or you call it any other flower. So you call it hybrid or high flex or online or offline, teaching and learning process is smelling similarly. We had experience of 19 COVID last year, whole year went online, and that was also in phases. In first phase, we immediately moved to online classes. There was rapid transition. Then in phase 2, we added some basics because, we did not know how long we are going to have these online classes. So phase-wise, first we started the online, then we added some value, then we even extended the transition, online classes and material. And now I think the way kids are getting graduated, even schools are graduated while delivering online classes. So something very interesting, we use a lot of flip learning for smaller classes, because that is your question actually. So what we're doing, that we send a lot of content to home in advance. We had very strong ERP where it was very easy for our school to send online content to the parents for smaller kids. Once content is reached and they have studied something, then a teacher support was provided. We did not extend our classes more than 1 hour for pre-primary and 1.5 hours for grade 1 to 3. So idea was that not to give a lot of screen time, but at the same time, kids should not miss any learning objective. So for the learning objective with the syllabus, we divided the syllabus day-wise. First time we have done it, though earlier our syllabus used to be fortnightly. Then we divided especially per day syllabus for every class from pre-primary till 5. So even parents knew what is going to be taught. Even teachers knew if even one child is missing the class, he was aware that this is one particular topic has been taught yesterday and this is what is going to be taught today, so that they come pre-prepared. Now we are moving to new ERP this year, because the earlier ERP there was one-way traffic that teachers were able to push the content. But now on the new ERP, what is happening that we are able to push the content at the same time child is doing some assignment and submitting on the same ERP. So we have done Zoom classes, we have done Microsoft, then Google. Now we have got combination of all, we call it LMS, Learning Management System, where we are going to continue in a similar fashion in new session. I'm not expecting school to open soon before June. So we are ready for April classes from 1st April onwards. We are going to have flipped learning with some content to be moved and 1.5 hour classes by the teacher.
Right.
6, 7, and 8, we are going to open it in staggering manner.
So at the primary level, you're still looking at running in the online mode with relying largely on your learning management system to ensure that the curriculum, the syllabus is addressed effectively. And with 6th, 7th, 8th, you'll gradually get into the physical mode. So, what I'm taking away from this conversation, Surendraji, you were finishing your thought. What?
Yeah, as you said, 6, 7, 8, we are planning that one particular day, there would be grade 6, next day grade 7, next day grade 8, so that we can divide whole section into 2 groups, not more than 15 students in one section. The one class who is not going to come to the school, let us say one particular day, grade 6 is present, grade 7 will be at home, those grade 7 will be taught online.
Right. So let us say in grade 6, 15 of these, say there are 30 students in class and 15 students are coming physically to class. The other 15 are getting the recorded lesson, right? They're getting the live transmission of that lesson.
We have the live transmission because we have smart boards in the classroom. So teacher is teaching online. So the students, those who are present in the classroom, they are looking at the smart board. Everything is visible. The same content is delivered at home.
Right. So the same content is getting delivered at home. Brian, do you want to add anything? So anything specifically you want to add, Brian? You were talking about the technology. Let's move there. Yeah.
Well, it's very similar to what Surendra just said, but I think the important point, Surendra, about roses is you have to watch the fertilizer. So we need to think what that fertilizer is if we're going to make this grow. In terms of what we're doing, we use Logitech cameras in every classroom so that they are maneuverable. So it means that the teacher involved in different activities is able to change the position of the camera to show different things happening in the room. It's linked to the teacher's laptop, to the interactive whiteboard, to the smart TV, whatever might be being used in that classroom, so that the pupils who are online, just as Surendra said, can see exactly the same thing as the people who are in the class. In addition to that, because our lessons are generally, the emphasis is on interaction and group work. So we use software like Padlets to divide the children into groups, and that includes the ones who are online. And this means they can go into breakout rooms. Now we use Teams for this, and all of our schools use Teams primarily for safety reasons, because Zoom and Google, unfortunately, have had around the world some bad examples of people hacking in and using them inappropriately. I won't go into details, but it's been a bad experience for some schools. But we wanted to avoid any of that. So Teams is encrypted and protected. And the advantage of Teams is it's got a whole lot of other things going for it. You can have an auditorium picture where the whole class is up on the screen. You can have different teams and groups. You can stream it, that is, record everything as you're doing it. We have all of our content, all of our courses are on our virtual learning environment. So anybody who misses anything, who's off sick at any time, or is not in the same time zone, can access all of this. So they're not missing anything at any time. It's all recorded and available for parents. And what parents like about that is even if they've seen the lesson and taken part in the lesson, it means if something wasn't clear, they can go back and look at the lesson again.
Right.
So we're putting in place lots of different methods using the technology. We're adding to that we're introducing in the new session, artificial intelligence to support the personalized learning. So that we'll have some programs for that. So those are some of the things that we're doing to make it accessible at all times and at times that are suitable for parents. So for example, for the youngest children, if the parent doesn't find that time suitable to work with their child, then they can download the lesson, work from it at any time. It might be they're working during the day and said, right, I've got an hour and a half in the evening I'm going to spend with my child. So we'll do it then. So we're giving them as much flexibility as possible to do these things. And we're giving them a range of activities that they have a choice in, whatever they think is most suitable. So we're trying to be as flexible as we can.
Right. Great. So, Brian, you spoke about Logitech cameras attached to the teacher's laptop and to these smart devices, whether it's interactive boards or whatever you have in the class or televisions, focusing on using Teams as the platform to facilitate group work for those who are taking the same class online, right? And having Padlets. So if the class is doing the same activity in group discussions within the classroom or providing their reflections in person, the online students are able to do the same through Padlet and through the breakout rooms in Teams, right? Now, Shashi, you were sharing something interesting about swivel cameras, and we expect that from HCL. So,
no, but just to share, Manit, exactly as Brian was sharing, we have a similar kind of technology kind of toolkit, if I may use the word, where every teacher has the camera attached, and we alongside also have an extra one, because for the senior classes sometimes you do need to, for mathematics, physics, chemistry, other places, not the lab work as well as the classroom work, you need to kind of focus on derivations and things happening where the board work is equally important. Yeah. So exactly as he was pointing out, I was wondering, I think it's also a lot of validation when you listen to your senior colleagues and what is happening. So I would like to thank him for sharing that.
So we'll move to Ela. Do you want to add something? Because then we want to quickly move to the videos. What we tried to do for the viewers is put together videos of how technology is being used in these classrooms to facilitate hybrid learning. We thought that would be very, very useful for the group to understand. So Ela, do you want to add something? Or should we move to the videos?
I think we have been using almost the similar model which Brian has already shared, like using Padlets and teachers positioning in such a manner so that physical and the virtual, both the students can be catered. A lot of flipped class models and inquiry-based learnings has been happening. So I think the videos speak a lot what we have been doing.
Great. So Malika, let's see the videos, and we also have Dilip here, our Secretary General, the head of FICCI, and we're going to hear from Dilip in a little while. Let's see the videos first, take a couple of questions from the group, and then we'll come back to Dilip. Dilip, you want to say hello to everybody? Malika, let's have the videos.
Aman, can you please play the video?
teaching online, offline, and sharing the smart board and also the presentation. So the topic for the day is data representation.
Let us see the next concept. What is the SI unit of speed? Is there anyone from online who can answer? Ramya, can you answer what is the SI unit of speed?
Yes, sir. The SI unit of speed is meter per second.
Exactly. The SI unit of speed is meter per second. Okay, can anyone from here offline tell me what is the bigger unit of speed? Generally you use that unit in car. Yes, sir. Kilometer per hour. Right, that is
the best thing I learned was that we were taught teamwork. Like one was getting different answers, the other was getting different answers, but then still we agreed upon a single answer. So that was the best thing that.
नहाने से पहले आपने अंगूठी कहाँ रखी थी?
This is rotation and this is revolution. Now let us demonstrate rotation and revolution. Right? So Prisha, can you first show how the earth rotates around its own axis? Okay, that's good. Now let's say Tanisha is sun. Now you are the earth. Now can you demonstrate how can you revolve around the sun? You can move around? Yes? Okay. Now children, can you tell if he is revolving or rotating?
Revolution.
Can you also rotate at the same time? Rotate the ball? Yes. So what is this movement called?
Rotation. Rotate.
Rotation. And can you revolve once again?
That's called revolution.
This is called revolution. So because of rotation.
The seasons occur due to the tilt and the hemispheres.
Exactly. So when the northern hemisphere is receiving, tell me. Yes. So the different seasons, which part of the world is receiving sunlight?
India.
The other part, which is Asia. What about America? Thought of this. Why is the globe little tilted? It is bent towards one side. Why do you think so? Yes. Okay. So one important point you have to note here is there is an imaginary line that passes through center of the earth, starting from North Pole to the South Pole. Right, children? What is that imaginary line called? Imaginary line is called?
Axis.
Axis.
Modernizing the country. The second panel has a reverse the monochromatic colors, wherein the background is black and the characters are outlined.
So we kind of know that was a more religious and about the political part of it rather than the growing up aspects of it.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
What's a primary cell?
The molecule used as a reactant.
Okay, any other answer? A primary cell is a cell. The chemical reaction happening in the cell is irreversible. Once the chemicals are used, now you can't use them. But of course, in the lab, when we are using the primary cells, we use such cells that we can put the chemicals again once the cell has been used. Okay, any other answer? A primary cell is a cell. The chemical reaction happening in the cell is irreversible. That's a primary cell. The aggregator cell, the cells that you put in your TV remote, etc. All these are primary cells. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 4. Any more?
Thank you so much. I had only 48 hours to put together these videos, and I can promise you, more than the technicalities and techniques, these videos give us hope. And in these times, that is what we need the most. I think we've been through the worst. The worst is definitely over. The only way is up from here. And looking at all that you've created, despite all odds, against all odds, it's fantastic what human resilience can produce. Great to see these examples, and I'm sure the viewers would have learned a lot from everything that you've shared, as all of us are going about figuring out our models. And the subject is really vast. We can go on the entire day dissecting different strategies, analyzing what can work, what will work in my context, how will I adapt to the classroom size that I have, how do I adapt to the population that I have, how do I adapt with the limited number of teachers I have, do I run double shifts, do I run alternate days, do I run hybrid, do I not run hybrid, do I take a math class if I have 6 sections in grade 7, do I take 3 sections of students in physical mode together in the physical mode, and then 3 sections offline of the same topic? How do we organize the curriculum? Surendraji telling us they've gone down to 1-day syllabus instead of fortnightly syllabus. I'm sure all of you are experimenting, innovating every day and adapting to the situation. Surendraji, one last comment, and then I want to invite Dilip.
Because of this hybrid or high flex model, it is very, very important for us to operationally define our approach to the students, and students must know what is expected from them. That will definitely help every school.
Right. And clarity, as much clarity as we can offer amongst this highly confusing scenario, the more we'll benefit. Chachi, you want to say something?
Nothing. I couldn't leave without remembering Rumi saying, beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there's a field. I'll meet you there. So I think we are all on to looking for that one point, which is, you can't really say what is right, what is wrong, but we have to meet our children there.
Thank you so much once again to all of you for sharing so openly. Dilip, over to you.
No, I think that, for me, attending a FICCI Arise session or a meeting is always an eye opener. But today, I think whether it was, all the four presenters today, Brian, Ms. Shashi Banerjee, Ila Pandey, and also the principal of Delhi Public School from Bhopal in Ahmedabad. I think each of the presentations was fascinating. Manit, as you know, but maybe the other participants may not know that I come from a family of educators, and both in college and school. And what you have actually done today and shared these experiences with the other wider community is absolutely path-breaking. Sorry, it does have a word of a school in this thing, but it is actually path-breaking. And for me, it was a tremendous learning experience. With the videos there, I really actually went back to school. A lot of innovation actually happening there, and I believe that this is a great learning module here. And I know that Sumit is on the call. Sumit and Malika, you must actually share this with the higher education people as well, because what you teach will maybe differ from how you teach, but what is happening in these videos is how to blend the physical with the digital, and and actually the involvement of everybody out there, and the passion with which each one of you shared your success in the ways that you're doing is truly very rewarding for each of one of us who's attended. I'd like to thank each one of you for taking time out. For actually, you must have planned this much in advance, because the videos that you have shared would have taken some time to prepare, because you'd have to have a second or a third camera in the room. One of the videos talked about 2 cameras in the room, but to record that, you recorded another camera. But one thing which I just want to share with everybody, that earlier, when you actually did a classroom, it is very difficult to repeat a class for a student. If everyone, teachers, institutions have one singular pressure. The singular pressure is complete the syllabus before the exams, then give kids enough time to revise for the exams, and then everybody is using the results in the exam as a metric to attract new students. But this pressure to finish sometimes drives us to teach at the top. That means we don't. Here, if you actually integrate the video recording of a class, now it's a laptop. Every teacher has a laptop, right? We can actually have it in a normal classroom. We can put it up on our own school YouTube channel. Students and parents can revisit the class, and there's no cost. There's hardly any additional cost involved. So if I have missed a class, I don't have to worry. If I missed a class that I was attending with Sumit, I don't have to worry about reading his notes. At least his handwriting is good. If he has to read my handwriting, he won't even understand what notes I took in the classroom. So, I think this whole thing about parents can also look at it. Students can go back. The chat system now, before it, there used to be WhatsApp groups, but the whole, going to the next normal and back to school and back to learning, I think provides a huge opportunity for students and parents to closely integrate with the learning process going forward. And I want to compliment you, Manit, as chair of FICCI Arise, and you also run a group of schools. I think thank you each one of you for sharing this, and I think we have to take this viral. We have to go and share this with other institutions, people who could not attend today. We have to take it to different states and talk to them about the power of the new normal going forward. For me, again, it is a pleasure being with you. I'd like to thank each one of you and thank Sumit and Malika and team for putting this together.
Thanks, Dilip. Thank you for always showing up and encouraging us and guiding us in our endeavors. It's been a wonderful session. Thank you so much, everyone, the team at FICCI and Shashi, Surendraji, Brian, Ela, thank you so much for showing up and sharing everything that you're doing. And as Dilip put it, if we could all share our lessons live on YouTube, every child in the country could get educated. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good weekend.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you to all the